Some really cool announcements coming from AEW today. Plus, we're going to talk about CM Punk and everything that he had to say about AJ Lee returning. And yes, he did have some remarks about AEW. It's all coming up right here on the Ango Show. All right, guys, I think we should start off with AJ Lee. AJ Lee is one that everybody's constantly talking about. We've heard rumors. I've talked about the reports initially that came out that suggested AJ Lee could be coming back to the WWE. Now CM Punk is talking about it. Very interesting stuff. He did this interview with Peter Rosenberg. Complex Con, WWE was involved. CM Punk says that basically the question was whether or not AJ Lee wants to make a return now more than ever because he's back in the company. And he says, yeah, I would say it definitely did. It's more of a workload thing for her. She is very busy. I'm not trying to talk about it, but I'm also trying to temper people's expectations. If she wraps up some stuff that she's working on and she has the time and she feels like dipping her toe back in or jumping back in the pool, she'll let us know. Wow. He also goes on to say, her and I are similar in regard that we're out of time. You could pluck us both off from where we started and put us in kind of any era. I definitely think she would thrive here. She thrived back then when the women's focus wasn't there. And now this past week, every single television show we had opened with a women's match and main evented with a women's match. You can't tell me she wouldn't fit in there. I agree with that sentiment 1000%. AJ Lee returning to WWE just quite frankly makes a lot of sense. I've been proposing an idea for a while now. You guys might remember Seth Rollins, CM Punk. Yeah, I think they should do it. AJ Lee, Becky Lynch, let's get them in the mix. AJ Lee is one of those people that are incredibly talented. She was in the WWE and was a star at a time where women's wrestling was not a focus. Quite frankly, it was a joke at that time. So WWE bringing back AJ Lee is something I'm all for. You guys will hear me talk about this several times on the channel. I genuinely believe this would be good for business. It would be good for the industry. And it would be good, you know, for people like Roxanne and Cora Jade who are in NXT. It would be good for them, you know. If they ever want to do something where she passes the torch, WWE has an option, right? And that could be really cool. I'm not saying we need to see AJ Lee every single week, especially if she's busy, but the idea that she could be involved and potentially put somebody else over, I think it would be really cool. And I think we would be really foolish to not acknowledge that. I think that is something that we have to absolutely acknowledge. There is an opportunity there. I always thought AJ Lee would have showed up in AEW. And the fact that she didn't was actually really shocking to me. So let's see what happens. Let's see how it goes. I know there's a lot of rumors. I've been talking about this for a while, but CM Punk isn't shutting it down. And right now he's kind of like the middleman to all of this. So let's see what happens. Speaking of CM Punk, he's talking about AEW in the same exact interview. He had a lot to say. But what I found more fascinating was what he had to say about AEW. Obviously, he is sour towards AEW. It is very clear that CM Punk and his thoughts on AEW are going to be skewed based on the way things happen in AEW. And look, before we get to the quote, let's just be pretty honest here, right? The relationship between CM Punk and AEW will forever be damaged. I think it is very obvious that in an industry where we never say never, this is the one time where I would feel very comfortable saying never. Tony Khan and AEW publicly posting the footage of CM Punk and the fight and everything like that. I just don't think that was great. But basically, this is what happened. CM Punk did this interview and there was questions about people that he'd want to compete against and basically his experience in AEW. And he says that he regretted some of those matches. He said that some of those matches he regret basically because he felt like some of those people just don't understand the business. And he said specifically that he wasted some time on some matches. Now, at the same time, he's talking about guys that he wants to compete against in WWE, and he wants to go up against Bronson Reed. He wants to go up against Chad Gable. He wants to go up against Ludwig Kaiser and Gunther. You know, potentially some stuff with The Rock and Cody. Look, CM Punk's issue with AEW, it's never going to be resolved. And that's the reality. And I do agree that he wasted some of those matches. At the time, he was trying to help people, put people over, give them an opportunity to grow and get a name and get some buzz. And it just simply didn't work out. And I think obviously CM Punk talking about Jack Perry, you know, or CM Punk's issues with Jack Perry and just the way he talks about AEW now, I think it is very obvious that his departure hurt the company. I think it did. And, you know, some people are okay with that. Some people aren't going to be okay with that. I think it was a big blunder. I think they fumbled very big. And quite frankly, I think AEW has yet to recover from it. So people could act sour all they want against CM Punk. That's completely fine. I have no problem with that. But let me just remind you that with CM Punk in AEW, he did some very good things for that company. And he did a lot of big things for that company. And that company has had a hard time since his departure. So whether or not people like him, it doesn't really matter. You know, we waited so long for his return. He came to AEW and we really thought that was going to be his home. And it was very clear that the people in AEW did not want him there. We saw with all the reported drama, and we can all pick sides, but we weren't there to see it all. So I don't think that's necessarily fair to begin with. But nonetheless, the facts remain true. He left AEW. He got fired. AEW tried to turn it into an angle for Jack Perry. And quite frankly, the numbers and the interest there is pretty little. But I do have some interest in AEW. Today, they made some massive groundbreaking announcements, ones that I actually really like, to be honest. AEW is downsizing their arenas that they're going to, but they made their announcements, and I kind of just want to show you guys what is happening here. So we're going to throw it on the screen so you guys can see for yourself. Right here, let's do this, and let's just take a look. So AEW has announced their winter live events for 2024-2025. They are doing smaller venues. They are doing the Hammerstein Ballroom in New York City. Dynamite will be taped there, Collision, as well as ROH Final Battle. But if you take a look, look at all these different announcements. There's so many of them. But what's actually really cool, the one that I really want to pay attention to is this one. AEW Dynamite Fight for the Fallen at Harrah's Cherokee Center in Asheville, North Carolina. Definitely a smaller venue, but Fight for the Fallen, January 1st. This will be broadcasted live on TBS as well as Max streaming service. So that's their first one. Fight for the Fallen is always a great event for AEW because they also donate to charity. This time around, I believe they're doing it for the Hurricane Helen, or Helene, whatever it was pronounced, for the victims of that hurricane. But as you can see, they've announced so many things in advance. This is definitely a Kosha Irby type thing. He's the one in charge of this. So it sounds like they understand that smaller venues are important. But what's actually really cool about this announcement too, that I really want to point out, is the fact that with AEW going to these smaller venues, this is going to shake things up for the company. And that's good. They need a shakeup. I also want to point out that one of my favorite things about this announcement is also the fact that Rampage is not on there. And that is because as of 2024, Rampage will come to the conclusion. It will be done, and Dynamite and Collision will move forward. So that is really big takeaway from this announcement. I'm excited to see what happens, guys. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the Ango Show. Thanks for watching.